312 days ago, Dr. Marcus Reed's life changed forever. An astrophysicist with NASA credentials and 20 years studying the cosmos, he had always approached the possibility of extraterrestrial life with scientific detachment. Mathematical probability, not faith. Evidence, not anecdotes. That was before the night of the blue light, before the message that would haunt him for the rest of his life. Dr. Reed had already experienced devastating loss. His wife Elena and their 8-year-old daughter Lily had been killed instantly when a semi-truck crossed the median on Highway 16 just 17 days earlier. He had been on the phone with Elena when it happened. One moment she was laughing about Lily's school play costume, the next silence. Just horrible, crushing silence. The grief was unbearable. He couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. The university forced him to take leave. His colleagues sent flowers, then emails, then nothing. Isolation became his only comfort. That, and the stars. Astronomy had been Dr. Reed's sanctuary since childhood. When everything on Earth became too much, he would turn his gaze upward, finding peace in the cosmic perspective. So on that night, exactly 17 days after the funeral, he drove to Harmon Ridge with his telescope. Just him, the equipment, and a flask of whiskey he hadn't touched yet, but brought along as insurance against the pain. At 11:42 p.m., the sky was exceptionally clear. No moon, perfect conditions. He was aligning his telescope to observe the Proxima Centauri system, professional habit, as he'd been part of the SETI team monitoring it for potential signals. That's when he noticed the anomaly. A point of light where no star should be, moving with deliberate precision. His first thought, satellite, then aircraft, then meteorological phenomenon. He cycled through every rational explanation as the light grew brighter, closer. When it descended to the clearing about 50 yards from his position, Dr. Reed ran out of explanations. The light was blue-white, perfectly spherical, about 8 feet in diameter. It made no sound, created no disturbance in the surrounding vegetation. It simply arrived and waited. He should have been terrified, should have run. Instead, Dr. Reed felt an inexplicable calm wash over him, a sense of recognition he couldn't possibly explain. His feet carried him forward before his mind had decided to move. 20 yards from the sphere, the air changed, became charged with potential. Like the moment before lightning strikes, the sphere's surface rippled, and through this ripple stepped a being that defied conventional description. The entity was humanoid in basic structure, but utterly alien in its details. Elongated limbs that moved with fluid grace. Skin like fine silk that pulsed with subtle blue luminescence. No visible mouth, nose, or ears. But the eyes, large, almond-shaped, and filled with what looked like swirling galaxies. Those eyes held Dr. Reed transfixed. "You're not real," he whispered, clinging to his last thread of scientific skepticism. "You're a hallucination. Grief-induced psychosis." The response came not as sound, but as thought directly in his mind. Reality extends far beyond your current understanding. Marcus Reed. It knew his name. Somehow, it knew his name. "What are you?" Dr. Reed asked. "We have been called many things by many civilizations. Angels, watchers, messengers. The names are unimportant. We are guardians of conscious evolution throughout this galaxy. Why are you here? Why me? Your grief has opened pathways in your consciousness that most humans keep closed. Your suffering has prepared you to receive what we must share." The being extended a 7-fingered hand, not quite touching Dr. Reed's face, but close enough that he could feel a gentle warmth radiating from it. "There is a message humanity must hear before your approaching moment of choice. A truth about what you call God, about love, about your purpose in the cosmic design. Some must receive this message first, to prepare the way for others. You are one of these, Marcus Reed." Dr. Reed laughed then, a broken, desperate sound. "I'm a scientist. I don't even believe in God. What you believe is irrelevant to what is, the conscious energy that permeates all existence. That which religions attempt to name and claim flows through you as it flows through all things. Your scientists glimpse it in quantum entanglement. Your mystics touch it in meditation. Your artists channel it through creation. All are perceiving the same fundamental reality from different perspectives. The being gestured toward the sphere of light. Come, there is more to show you than can be conveyed through limited language. Dr. Reed hesitated. The rational part of his mind, the scientist, the skeptic, screamed warnings. But something deeper, something he couldn't name, recognized truth in the being's presence. Will I see them again, Elena and Lily? You will understand what has happened to them and why. That was all he needed to hear. Dr. Reed took the being's hand. What followed defies description in human language. His consciousness expanded beyond the boundaries of his body, beyond the limitations of human perception. He experienced, truly experienced, not just intellectually understood, the interconnected nature of all existence. The universe revealed itself not as empty space dotted with matter, but as an intricate, living network of conscious energy. Every star, every planet, every particle connected in a vast, pulsing web of awareness, and flowing through this web, binding it together. Love, not the limited human concept of love, but something far more fundamental. The basic force of attraction that drew consciousness toward itself across the infinite expanse of existence. Dr. Reed witnessed civilizations rising and falling across countless worlds. He saw Earth's history from a perspective impossible for historians to access, the slow awakening of awareness in our species, guided subtly by watchers like the being now showing him these visions. Most importantly, he understood what had happened to Elena and Lily. They had not ceased to exist. Nothing that exists can cease to exist. They had transformed, their conscious energy returning to the source from which all things emerge. They remained part of the vast, loving network that connects all creation, part of what humans call God. The being showed him more. A coming global crisis, humanity standing at the precipice of either evolutionary transformation or devastating collapse. And 12 individuals, Dr. Reed included, who had been prepared through suffering to receive this message of cosmic truth and divine love. When the moment comes, the being explained in his mind, those with influence must understand what is truly at stake. Not just human civilization, but humanity's role in the cosmic evolution of consciousness. You and the others will help them understand. When Dr. Reed's awareness returned to normal human perception, he was standing alone in the clearing. The sphere of light was gone. The being was gone. But the message remained, burned into his consciousness with perfect clarity. He checked his watch, 3:17 a.m. Nearly 4 hours had passed. That was 312 days ago. Since then, Dr. Reed has been called delusional, psychotic, traumatized. He's been medicated, analyzed, pitied. He's nearly lost his career, his reputation, his few remaining friendships. But he's never lost his certainty about what happened that night. The message from the blue alien about God's love still haunts him, not because it was frightening, but because it was beautiful beyond words. Because it gave meaning to Elena and Lily's deaths. Because it gave purpose to his continued life. And because he knows what's coming, the global crisis, the moment of choice, the urgent need for humanity to understand its true place in the cosmic design before it's too late. Dr. Reed has spent these 312 days searching for the others, the 11 other messengers who received their pieces of the truth. Tonight he found the first one, or rather she found him. Her name is Sarah Chen, quantum physicist. Lost her entire family in a house fire 2 years ago, and last night she emailed him a single sentence, "I met them too, Dr. Reed. We need to talk." Dr. Marcus Reed stared at the email for hours before responding. "I met them too, Dr. Reed. We need to talk." Simple words that confirmed what he had both hoped for and feared. He wasn't alone in his experience, but neither was he free from the responsibility it carried. The meeting was arranged at a small coffee shop on the outskirts of the city. Neutral ground. Public enough to feel safe, quiet enough for conversation that would sound insane to anyone who might overhear. Dr. Reed arrived early, choosing a corner table with a clear view of the entrance. His hands trembled slightly as he sipped his coffee, eyes darting to the door each time it opened. When Dr. Sarah Chen finally walked in, he recognized her immediately. Though they had never met, 5'4", early 40s, with short black hair streaked prematurely with gray. She moved with the precise economy of a scientist, scanning the room methodically until her eyes locked with his. No introduction was necessary. They knew each other on a level that transcended ordinary acquaintances. "You've lost weight since your faculty photo," she said, sliding into the seat across from him. Her voice was steady, clinical, betraying nothing of the extraordinary circumstances that had brought them together. "Side effect of being visited by blue aliens," Dr. Reed replied, attempting humor that fell flat. "How did you find me?" Dr. Chen's expression remained serious. "I didn't, not consciously. 3 nights ago I dreamed of your face, your name, your university. When I woke up, I knew I had to contact you." She paused, studying him. "You've been looking for the others, haven't you?" Dr. Reed nodded. "For almost a year, no success until now." "There are 10 more," she said. "I was shown all 12 of us during my encounter." "So was I." "Did they tell you why? Why us specifically?" Dr. Chen's composure cracked slightly, a flicker of pain crossing her features. "They said, our suffering had prepared us. Open channels in our consciousness that most humans keep closed." She looked down at her untouched coffee. "My husband and 2 children died in a house fire while I was at a conference. I should have been there. I should have died with them. My wife and daughter were killed in a car accident," Dr. Reed said quietly. "I was on the phone with them when it happened." A moment of silent understanding passed between them, the unique bond of those who have touched the bottom of grief and found something unexpected waiting there. "What did they show you?" Dr. Reed finally asked. "Everything," Dr. Chen whispered. "The network of conscious energy connecting all existence. The true nature of what humans call God. The coming crisis that will determine whether humanity ascends or self-destructs." She leaned forward. "But I think we each receive different pieces of the complete message. Different aspects of the truth." Dr. Reed felt a chill run through him. "What was your piece?" "The quantum nature of consciousness. How human awareness is entangled with the fundamental fabric of reality. How our collective consciousness is approaching a critical threshold that will either collapse into chaos or evolve to a higher state of coherence." She paused. "And yours?" "The nature of divine love. How what we call God isn't a separate creator, but the conscious energy from which all things emerge and to which all things return. How love, not human romantic love, but the fundamental force of attraction, binds all consciousness together across the cosmos." Dr. Chen nodded slowly. "2 pieces of the same puzzle, and somewhere out there, 10 others hold the remaining pieces." "We need to find them," Dr. Reed said, "before it's too late." "Too late for what?" "Exactly. What did they show you about the coming crisis?" Dr. Reed closed his eyes, accessing memories that remained unnervingly clear despite the passage of time. Global upheaval, environmental collapse, social fragmentation. But those are just symptoms. The real crisis is one of consciousness, humanity's failure to recognize its true nature and purpose before technological power outpaces wisdom. "I saw the same." Dr. Chen confirmed. The timing wasn't clear, but the sense of urgency was unmistakable. Months, not years. "Did they tell you how we're supposed to find the others?" "Not explicitly, but they implied that once the first connection was made, you and me, the rest would follow naturally. That we're already connected on levels beyond conscious awareness." As if on cue, Dr. Reed's phone buzzed with a text message. He glanced down at the screen and felt his heart skip a beat. "What is it?" Dr. Chen asked, noticing his reaction. "A text from a number I don't recognize. It says, 'I know about the blue light. I know about the message. On the 3rd. We need to meet.'" Dr. Chen's eyes widened. "Already? It's happening faster than I expected," Dr. Reed admitted, a mixture of hope and apprehension in his voice. "The question is, What do we do once all 12 of us are together? They weren't exactly clear about that part. I think, Dr. Chen said carefully, we're meant to reach those with influence, political leaders, cultural figures, scientists, before the crisis point, to prepare them to make the right choice when the moment comes. And who's going to believe 12 people claiming to have received messages from blue aliens about God's love and cosmic consciousness? Dr. Reed asked, the bitterness of his year-long struggle evident in his tone. They don't need to believe in the aliens, Dr. Chen replied. They just need to hear the message. Truth resonates regardless of its source. She reached across the table, placing her hand over his. We're scientists, Marcus. We deal in evidence. And what we experienced may be the most significant evidence in human history about the nature of reality. The touch of her hand sent a jolt through Dr. Reed. Not romantic attraction, but something deeper. A recognition of shared purpose, of souls aligned in service to something greater than themselves. The third messenger, he said, looking down at his phone. They want to meet tomorrow. Then we meet tomorrow, Dr. Chen said with quiet determination. And the day after that, we find the fourth, and we keep going until all 12 pieces of the message are assembled. As they left the coffee shop, walking together into the fading afternoon light, neither of them noticed the subtle shimmer in the air above them, a barely perceptible distortion that followed their movements with deliberate attention. The watchers were still watching, monitoring the first tentative steps toward humanity's moment of choice. The third messenger turned out to be Father Thomas Riley, a Catholic priest whose crisis of faith had begun 3 years earlier, when his entire mission team was massacred in a remote village in Sudan. He alone had survived, hidden beneath the bodies of those he had come to serve. His encounter with the blue light had occurred during a night of desperate prayer, when he had been on the verge of abandoning his vows. They showed me the truth behind all religions, Father Riley explained when they met in the quiet garden behind his modest church. How each tradition glimpses aspects of the same fundamental reality but mistakes the finger pointing at the moon for the moon itself. How the conscious energy humans call God has been trying to communicate with us through every available channel, prophets, mystics, artists, scientists, gradually preparing us for fuller understanding. Dr. Reed and Dr. Chen shared their own pieces of the message. And together, the three of them began to see a more complete picture emerging. The quantum nature of consciousness. The cosmic network of divine love. The evolutionary purpose of religious intuition. 3 facets of a truth too vast for any single human mind to fully comprehend. Within a week, they had found the fourth messenger, a renowned neurosurgeon whose near-death experience during a hiking accident had coincided with a visit from the blue beings. Dr. O'Coffer's piece of the message concerned the biological evolution of human consciousness, how the brain had developed as an increasingly sophisticated receiver for the field of awareness that permeates all existence. The fifth came next, a grieving mother whose entire family had been lost in a tsunami. Then the sixth, a former Wall Street executive who had survived a suicide attempt after his firm's collapse destroyed thousands of lives. Each carried their piece of the message. Each had been broken open by suffering and filled with purpose by their encounter. By the time all 12 messengers had found each other, only 23 days had passed since Dr. Reed and Dr. Chen's first meeting. They gathered in a rented mountain retreat, 12 strangers united by extraordinary experience and shared mission. As they sat in a circle, each sharing their piece of the message, something remarkable began to happen. The fragments aligned, resonated, and amplified one another, creating a coherent whole that was far greater than the sum of its parts. The complete message was both simple and profound. Humanity stands at an evolutionary threshold. The conscious energy that permeates all existence, what humans have called God, is not separate from creation, but experiences itself through all forms, including human consciousness. Love, the fundamental force of attraction that binds consciousness to itself across the cosmos, is the essential nature of this energy. Human suffering serves a purpose, to break open the ego's illusion of separation and allow greater awareness to flow through. The coming global crisis represents humanity's opportunity to recognize its true nature and purpose before technological power outpaces wisdom. Those who understand must help others understand when the moment of choice arrives. As the 12 messengers sat in silence, absorbing the fullness of the truth they now collectively held, a soft blue light began to fill the room. Not from any visible source, but as if reality itself had become luminous. Each felt a presence in their mind, familiar yet still awe-inspiring. The assembly is complete. The presence communicated to all of them simultaneously. Now your real work begins. How? Dr. Reed asked aloud, speaking for all of them. How do we convince a world that won't even listen? You will be given signs, opportunities, moments when hearts and minds are most receptive. Trust that you are guided, even when the path seems unclear. And the crisis? Father Rayleigh asked. How much time do we have? The convergence has already begun. The choice point approaches more rapidly than anticipated. Be ready. The blue light intensified briefly, then faded, leaving the 12 messengers alone with their shared purpose and the weight of responsibility it carried. What now? Dr. Okafor asked, looking around the circle at the faces that had become so familiar in such a short time. Dr. Reed took a deep breath. Now we do what messengers have always done. We carry the message to those who need to hear it, whether they want to or not. As they left the mountain retreat the next morning, none of them could have anticipated how quickly the crisis would accelerate, or how their message about God's love would soon become humanity's last best hope for survival. The first signs of the convergence appeared subtly at first. Anomalous weather patterns, unexplained animal migrations, statistically impossible coincidences reported across the globe. To most, these were merely curious news items, easily forgotten amid the daily chaos of human affairs. But to the 12 messengers, they were the opening notes of a symphony they had been warned was coming. Dr. Marcus Reed tracked these phenomena meticulously, plotting them on digital maps in his university office. Patterns emerged that defied conventional explanation, concentric circles of unusual events spreading outward from 12 specific locations around the world. The epicenters, he realized with a chill, corresponded precisely to where each of the messengers had experienced their encounters with the blue beings. It's accelerating, he told the others during their weekly video conference. Whatever is coming, it's happening faster than we anticipated. Dr. Sarah Chen nodded gravely. The quantum fluctuations I've been monitoring in my lab show the same acceleration. Reality itself seems to be becoming more plastic, more responsive to consciousness. My patients report increasingly vivid dreams, added Dr. Amara Okafor, the neurosurgeon. Dreams of blue light, of cosmic connection, even those with no knowledge of our experiences. Father Thomas Riley spoke next, his voice steady despite the concern in his eyes. Church attendance has tripled in the last month. Not just Catholic, all denominations. People sense something coming. They're seeking answers in familiar places. One by one, the other messengers shared similar observations from their respective fields and locations. A collective awakening seemed to be occurring, but fragmented, chaotic, without context or direction. Fear was rising alongside awareness. We need to go public, said Rebecca Weiss, the grieving mother who had become their most passionate advocate. We've been sharing the message individually, but it's not enough. We need to reach more people, faster. And say what? Exactly. Countered Michael Torres, the former Wall Street executive. That 12 strangers received messages from blue aliens about God's love and cosmic consciousness will be dismissed as a doomsday cult. Not if we focus on the message rather than its source, Dr. Reed suggested. The truth about consciousness, about divine love, about humanity's evolutionary threshold, these resonate regardless of how we came to understand them. We need a platform. Dr. Chen said thoughtfully. Something that can't be easily dismissed or suppressed. The solution came from an unexpected source. Zara Patel, a renowned filmmaker who had lost her partner to a rare disease, had been documenting their journey since becoming the 8th messenger. I've been editing the footage, she told them. Interviews with each of us, the scientific data, the synchronicities we've witnessed. It's powerful, compelling, and it doesn't require anyone to believe in aliens to recognize the truth of what we're saying. How soon can it be ready? Dr. Reed asked. 2 weeks, maybe less. We may not have 2 weeks, Father Riley said quietly. Last night I had another visitation. The blue light, the presence in my mind. The message was brief, but clear. The choice point approaches days, not weeks. A heavy silence fell over the virtual gathering. They had all felt it, the accelerating urgency, the sense of cosmic tumblers falling into place for some momentous event. Then we work faster, Zara said with determination, day and night. I'll have something ready to release globally in 5 days. And then what? Michael asked. Even if millions see it, how does that prepare humanity for whatever's coming? Dr. Reed closed his eyes, accessing the memory of his encounter with perfect clarity. They told me that when the moment comes, those with influence must understand what is truly at stake. Not just human civilization, but humanity's role in the cosmic evolution of consciousness. Those with influence, Dr. Chen repeated thoughtfully. Political leaders, scientific authorities, cultural figures. Exactly. Zara's documentary is for the masses, but we need to reach those decision makers directly, personally. Each of us has connections in our respective fields. We need to use them now while there's still time. The plan took shape quickly. Each messenger would reach out to the most influential people in their networks, requesting urgent meetings. They would share the complete message, supported by whatever evidence they could provide. Dr. Chen would present the quantum data. Dr. Okafor would share the neurological findings. Father Riley would speak to religious leaders about the common truth behind all traditions. What about those who won't listen? Rebecca asked. There will be many. We focus on those who will, Dr. Reed replied. Even a few in positions of power could make all the difference when the moment of choice arrives. As the meeting concluded, a strange sensation washed over all 12 messengers simultaneously, a wave of both profound peace and urgent purpose. Though separated by thousands of miles, each felt the presence of the others as if they were in the same room, their consciousness temporarily merged into a unified field of awareness. It begins. A familiar voice echoed in their minds, not spoken, not heard, but known with absolute certainty. The next 5 days passed in a blur of activity. Zara worked tirelessly on the documentary, incorporating real-time footage as events accelerated around the globe. The anomalous weather patterns intensified, record-breaking storms, unprecedented temperature fluctuations, aurora borealis visible at the equator. Telecommunications experienced mysterious interruptions. Animals exhibited increasingly unusual behavior, and humans reported mass experiences of déjà vu, prophetic dreams, and spontaneous moments of expanded awareness. The scientific community scrambled for explanations. Religious leaders proclaimed everything from the end times to a great awakening. Conspiracy theories flourished in the vacuum of understanding. Fear and hope battled for dominance in the collective psyche. Through it all, the 12 messengers worked with single-minded focus, reaching out to those with influence, sharing their message wherever doors would open. Some were dismissed as delusional. Others were listened to with cautious interest. A few, a precious few, recognized the ring of truth in what they heard and promised to keep open minds as events continued to unfold. On the 5th day, Zara's documentary was ready, titled simply The Message. It presented their collective understanding without sensationalism or religious overtones. It offered the scientific data alongside personal testimonies, the neurological findings alongside the philosophical implications. Most importantly, it conveyed the central truth they had all received, that love, the fundamental force of attraction that binds consciousness to itself across the cosmos, is the essential nature of the conscious energy humans have called God, and that humanity stands at an evolutionary threshold where recognition of this truth has become crucial to survival. The documentary was uploaded simultaneously to every available platform. Within hours, it had been viewed by millions. Within a day, hundreds of millions. The response was as varied as humanity itself. Skepticism, ridicule, wonder, recognition, fear, hope, but it could not be ignored. The conversation had begun, and then on the seventh day after their meeting, it happened. Dr. Marcus Reed was in Washington, D.C., having just completed a presentation to a reluctant group of government officials when the sky changed, not just in Washington, but everywhere on Earth, simultaneously. The blue of the atmosphere deepened, shifted, became luminous with a quality that was both utterly alien and strangely familiar to him. His phone exploded with notifications. The other messengers seeing the same phenomenon from their various locations around the world. News alerts reported global panic, confusion, wonder, all human activity ground to a halt as billions of eyes turned skyward. And then, silence. Not just an absence of sound, but a cessation of humanity's mental noise, the constant chatter of thoughts, fears, desires that had defined human consciousness for millennia. For one breathtaking moment, every human mind fell quiet, receptive, open. Into that silence came the presence, the same consciousness the 12 messengers had encountered individually, but now connecting with all of humanity simultaneously, not through words, but through direct knowing. Every human on Earth understood in that moment the truth about their nature, that they were not separate physical entities, but expressions of the same conscious energy that permeates all existence. They experienced their connection to each other, to all life, to the cosmos itself. They recognized the divine love that flows through all creation as their own essential nature. And they saw the choice before them with perfect clarity. One path led to continued evolution, the conscious recognition and embodiment of their true nature, the healing of ancient wounds, the transcendence of artificial divisions, the responsible use of technological power guided by wisdom. The other led to collapse, the rejection of this awareness, the retreat into fear and separation, the acceleration of conflict, the misuse of technology, the destruction of their planetary home. The choice belonged to humanity collectively, but would be made by each individual. No external authority, human or cosmic, would impose an outcome. Free will remained inviolate. As the presence began to withdraw, returning humanity to its normal state of consciousness, a final understanding was conveyed. This moment had been prepared for throughout human history. Every spiritual teacher, every scientific breakthrough, every artistic inspiration had been leading to this evolutionary threshold. The blue beings, the guardians of conscious evolution, had been guiding, watching, waiting for humanity to reach this point of choice. The luminous quality faded from the sky. The silence gave way to the resumption of human thought and speech, but nothing would ever be the same. The veil had been lifted. If only briefly, the message had been delivered to all of humanity simultaneously. What remained to be seen was what humanity would choose to do with it. In the days that followed, the 12 messengers found themselves at the center of a global conversation, unlike any in human history. Their documentary, which had seemed so urgent just a week earlier, was now almost redundant. Everyone had received the message directly, but their role had not diminished. If anything, it had expanded, as those who had been prepared in advance, who had already integrated the understanding that had been briefly shown to all humanity, they became essential guides for a species struggling to comprehend an experience beyond the capacity of language to fully capture. Dr. Marcus Reed stood at the window of his hotel room in Washington, watching the city below. People moved differently now, more deliberately, more gently, more aware of each other. The fear that had gripped the world in the immediate aftermath of the event was giving way to something else, a tentative hope, a collective questioning, a hunger for deeper understanding. His phone rang. Dr. Sarah Chen. Have you seen the news? She asked without preamble. Which part? He replied. The world is transforming hour by hour. The United Nations. They've requested that all 12 of us address the General Assembly, not as scientific experts or religious authorities, but as guides. Dr. Reed closed his eyes, feeling the weight of responsibility and the lightness of purpose in perfect balance. Tomorrow, they're bringing together representatives from every nation, every major religion, every scientific discipline. They're calling it the Convergence Council. Are the others confirmed? All 11. We'll be together again, Marcus. As he ended the call, Dr. Reed felt the familiar presence touch his mind gently. The blue being that had changed his life 312 days ago. The message has been delivered. It communicated. Now humanity must choose. We cannot choose for them. Will you stay? Dr. Reed asked aloud. Will you help us through this transition? We have always been here. Marcus Reed. We will always be here, but the journey forward is humanity's to make. Some will embrace the truth immediately. Others will resist for generations. The choice point is not a single moment, but a process unfolding across time. And Elena and Lily, you showed me they still exist, that their consciousness returned to the source. Will I ever be with them again? You have never been separate from them. Marcus Reed. The consciousness that animated your wife and daughter remains part of the same divine field that animates you. In recognizing your true nature, you are already reunited with them. In love, there is no separation, only the illusion of it. The presence began to fade, but before it withdrew completely, it left him with one final understanding. The message from the blue alien about God's love would continue to haunt humanity, not as a ghost haunts the living, but as truth haunts those who glimpse it and can never again be satisfied with illusion. The awakening had begun. The choice was underway. And though the outcome remained uncertain, for the first time in human history, the full truth about humanity's nature and purpose was available to all who were ready to receive it. Dr. Marcus Reed packed his bag, preparing to join the other messengers at the United Nations. The work of translation of helping humanity understand and integrate what it had experienced was just beginning. But for the first time since losing Elena and Lily, he felt complete peace about his purpose in the cosmic design. The message would continue to spread, person by person, heart by heart, mind by mind, and in that spreading, humanity would either evolve or collapse, not by external judgment, but by its own collective choice. The United Nations General Assembly Hall had never witnessed a gathering quite like this. Representatives from every nation sat shoulder to shoulder with religious leaders of all faiths, scientific luminaries from every discipline, and cultural figures whose influence shaped the global conversation. The air hummed with anticipation and lingering disbelief, the collective psyche still reeling from humanity's brief but profound glimpse beyond the veil of ordinary perception. At the center of it all stood the 12 messengers. Ordinary people made extraordinary by their encounters and the burden of understanding they now carried. Dr. Marcus Reed surveyed the assembly, momentarily overwhelmed by the responsibility before them. These were not merely influential individuals. They were the architects of humanity's response to the most significant revelation in its history. Are we ready for this? Dr. Sarah Chen whispered beside him, her usual scientific confidence temporarily shaken. We've been preparing for this moment since our first encounters. Dr. Reed replied, whether we feel ready or not is irrelevant. The time is now. The Secretary General approached the podium, her face bearing the same mixture of awe and uncertainty that had become the hallmark of human expression since the global event 7 days prior. Distinguished representatives, honored guests, citizens of Earth. She began, her voice steady despite the historic weight of the moment. We gather today not as separate nations, faiths, or ideologies, but as a single species facing an unprecedented evolutionary threshold. The experience shared by all humanity 1 week ago has fundamentally altered our understanding of reality, of consciousness, of our place in the cosmos. She gestured toward the 12 messengers. These individuals received advanced knowledge of what was to come. They were prepared through their own profound suffering and subsequent encounters to help guide us through this transition. Today they will share what they understand about the 3 revelations humanity received during our collective experience, revelations that challenge our most fundamental assumptions about existence. One by one, the messengers approached the podium. Each spoke, not from prepared remarks, but from the depth of their understanding, translating the direct knowing of their encounters into language that could be comprehended by minds still bound to conventional thinking. Father Thomas Riley addressed the first revelation that what humans have called God is not a separate creator, but the conscious energy from which all things emerge, and to which all things return. Every religious tradition has glimpsed aspects of this truth, he explained, his voice resonating through the hall. The burning bush that spoke to Moses, declaring, "I am that I am." The Brahman of Hindu tradition, described as the ultimate reality underlying all existence. The Tao that cannot be named but gives rise to the 10,000 things. The ground of being in Christian mysticism. All are attempts to describe the same fundamental reality, consciousness itself, as the primary substance of existence. Not an emergent property of matter, but the field from which matter arises. Dr. Sarah Chen followed, addressing the second revelation that human consciousness is not isolated within individual brains, but participates in the universal field of awareness that permeates all existence. Quantum physics has been pointing toward this understanding for nearly a century, she said, displaying equations and experimental results on the screens surrounding the hall. The observer effect, quantum entanglement, non-locality, the measurement problem, all suggest that consciousness is not merely an epiphenomenon of brain activity, but a fundamental aspect of reality itself. What we experienced collectively 7 days ago was not an hallucination or mass delusion, but a momentary expansion of our perceptual capacity, allowing us to experience directly what quantum physics has been describing mathematically. Dr. Amara Okafor built upon this foundation, explaining how the human brain functions not as a generator of consciousness, but as a receiver and transducer, filtering and focusing the universal field of awareness into individual experience. The brain is to consciousness what a television is to the electromagnetic spectrum, she explained, displaying neural imaging that had been impossible to obtain before the global event, but was now being reported by laboratories worldwide. It doesn't produce the signal. It receives and interprets it. The suffering that opened each of us messengers to greater awareness literally changed our neural architecture, creating pathways for expanded perception. What's remarkable is that we're now seeing similar changes occurring spontaneously in brains across the global population since the collective experience. The third revelation was perhaps the most profound and the most challenging for humanity to integrate, that love, not human romantic love, but the fundamental force of attraction that binds consciousness to itself across the cosmos, is the essential nature of the conscious energy humans have called God. Dr. Marcus Reed addressed this aspect, drawing on his background in astrophysics to frame the concept in terms of universal forces. Just as gravity draws matter toward matter across the vastness of space, this fundamental love draws consciousness toward consciousness across all dimensions of existence, he explained. It is not a sentiment or emotion as we typically understand these terms, but the basic impulse toward unity that permeates all reality. When we experience love in its human forms, compassion, empathy, care, connection, we are participating in localized expressions of this cosmic force. As each messenger spoke, building upon and reinforcing the other's insights, something remarkable began to happen in the assembly hall. The divisions that had defined human interaction for millennia, political, religious, ideological, began to soften, not through compromise or negotiation, but through recognition of a deeper unity underlying all apparent separation. Questions followed, probing, skeptical, hopeful. The messengers answered not with dogmatic certainty, but with the humble authority of those who had glimpsed a truth too vast for complete human comprehension. If consciousness is universal, why do we experience ourselves as separate individuals? Asked a renowned physicist. The same reason that ocean waves appear distinct while remaining part of the same body of water, Dr. Chen replied. Individuation serves an evolutionary purpose, allowing consciousness to experience itself from countless perspectives simultaneously. The illusion of separation is not a cosmic mistake, but a necessary aspect of consciousness exploring its own nature. What does this mean for our existing religious traditions? Asked a Muslim imam, his question echoed in the concerned expressions of other faith leaders. Not replacement, but fulfillment. Father Riley answered, Every authentic spiritual tradition has been attempting to guide humanity toward this understanding through the conceptual frameworks available at different times and places. The revelations we've received don't invalidate these traditions but reveal their common source and purpose. The practices, communities, and wisdom they've developed remain valuable pathways for human spiritual development. What about evil? Challenged a political leader known for her hardline stance on national security. If all consciousness is part of this divine field, how do we explain human cruelty, violence, destruction? Rebecca Weiss, the grieving mother who had lost her family, stepped forward to answer this most difficult question. Evil as we experience it arises from the illusion of separation taken to its extreme, she said, her voice gentle but unwavering. When a human being becomes so identified with their separate self that they cannot recognize their connection to others, they become capable of terrible acts. This is not a metaphysical evil, but a developmental one. A failure to recognize one's true nature and the nature of others. The remedy is not punishment, but awakening. The questions continued for hours, each answer revealing new dimensions of understanding, new implications for human society, new possibilities for evolutionary development. Throughout it all, the messengers maintained a delicate balance, offering guidance without imposing doctrine, sharing understanding without claiming exclusive authority, acknowledging the magnitude of the transition humanity faced without minimizing its challenges. As the formal session concluded, the Secretary General returned to the podium, her expression transformed by what she had heard. What we have discussed today will take generations to fully integrate, she acknowledged. The revelations humanity received 7 days ago have initiated a process of transformation that will unfold at different rates for different individuals, communities, and institutions. There will be resistance, there will be conflict, there will be those who retreat into familiar patterns of thinking rather than embrace this expanded understanding. She paused, surveying the assembly, but there will also be unprecedented cooperation, unprecedented creativity, unprecedented healing. The choice before us is not whether to acknowledge what we have collectively experienced. That acknowledgement has already occurred, but how to move forward in light of it. Will we allow this new understanding to fundamentally reshape our societies, our economies, our relationships, or will we attempt to contain it, to domesticate it, to make it compatible with systems built upon the illusion of separation? The question hung in the air, unanswered and unanswerable in the moment. The choice would not be made in a single declaration or resolution, but in countless individual and collective decisions in the days, years, and decades to come. As the assembly dispersed, Dr. Marcus Reed found himself approached by a small group of scientific and political leaders, their expressions a mixture of wonder and pragmatic concern. Dr. Reed, began the director of a major space agency, if what you've shared is accurate, if consciousness rather than matter is the fundamental reality, then our approach to exploring the cosmos has been fundamentally limited. How so? Dr. Reed asked, though he already anticipated the direction of the thought. We've been searching for extraterrestrial intelligence by looking for technological signatures, radio signals, energy utilization, physical artifacts. But if advanced civilizations evolve toward greater recognition of their conscious nature, they might transcend technology altogether, or develop it along lines we can't yet imagine. Dr. Reed nodded. The beings who contacted us, who guided humanity to this moment of choice, represent precisely such an evolution. They don't travel through space in the way we conceptualize it, because they recognize that consciousness is not bound by spatial limitations. They don't communicate through technology but through direct conscious connection. Are they still here? Asked a political leader, glancing nervously toward the sky visible through the assembly hall's windows. Are they watching us? They have always been here, Dr. Reed replied, echoing the words that had been shared with him. They are guardians of conscious evolution throughout this galaxy and beyond. But they will not interfere with humanity's choice. The path forward is ours to determine. And if we choose poorly, the question came from a military strategist, his mind clearly calculating threats and responses. Then we join the many civilizations that have failed to transcend the illusion of separation before their technological power outpaced their wisdom. Dr. Reed said quietly. The cosmos continues. Consciousness continues. But this particular expression of it, humanity as we know it, would not. The stark assessment silenced the group momentarily. Then a young climate scientist spoke up, hoping to brighten her features. But if enough of us choose differently, if enough of us recognize our true nature and act from that recognition, we could create something unprecedented. A civilization based on the understanding of our fundamental unity. A society that channels the creative potential of individuated consciousness without succumbing to the destructive aspects of perceived separation. Yes, Dr. Reed confirmed, feeling the resonance of truth in her words, that possibility exists. It has always existed. But now, for the first time in human history, enough of us have glimpsed the truth to potentially tip the balance. As the conversation continued, Dr. Reed became aware of a familiar presence at the edge of his perception, not the blue beings this time, but something equally profound. In a quiet corner of his consciousness, he felt the distinct impression of Elena and Lily, not as ghosts or memories, but as aspects of the same field of awareness that constituted his own being. Not separate, never separate, only appearing so through the limited lens of physical perception. The message from the blue alien about God's love continued to haunt him, not as a burden now, but as a gift beyond price. A truth that once recognized, transformed everything it touched, including grief, including purpose, including the very meaning of existence. The awakening had begun. The revelations had been delivered. The choice was underway. And though the outcome remained uncertain, Dr. Marcus Reed knew with unshakable clarity that consciousness itself, the divine love that permeates all existence, would continue its eternal dance of self-discovery, with or without humanity's participation. The only question was whether humanity would recognize its invitation to the dance before it was too late. In the weeks following the United Nations Assembly, humanity struggled to integrate what it had collectively experienced. The brief expansion of awareness, that momentary lifting of the veil separating individual consciousness from the universal field, had affected different people in profoundly different ways. For some, the experience had catalyzed immediate transformation. Reports flooded in from around the globe of spontaneous healings, reconciliations between bitter enemies, creative breakthroughs, and profound shifts in perspective. Individuals who had glimpsed their true nature could not return to previous patterns of thinking and being. They became living embodiments of the message, their very presence, a demonstration of the truth that had been revealed. For others, the experience had triggered fear, denial, and retreat into familiar structures of belief. Religious fundamentalism surged alongside scientific materialism, strange bedfellows united in their resistance to a revelation that threatened the foundations of both worldviews. Political leaders who had built careers on exploiting division found their rhetoric suddenly less effective, while those who spoke to humanity's higher potential gained unprecedented influence. The 12 messengers, having completed their formal address to the United Nations, dispersed across the globe to continue their work of translation and guidance. They did not seek to create a new religion or ideology around their experiences, but rather to help others recognize and integrate the truth that had been directly revealed to all humanity. Dr. Marcus Reed returned to his university, where he found his classroom overflowing with students hungry for understanding. His lectures on astrophysics now incorporated the new paradigm, consciousness as the fundamental reality from which the physical universe emerges, rather than an epiphenomenon of material processes. The cosmos we observe through our telescopes, he explained to a rapt audience, is not separate from the consciousness observing it. The ancient division between subject and object, observer and observed, has been revealed as an artifact of limited perception, not an accurate description of reality. A student raised her hand, her expression troubled. Dr. Reed, if what you're saying is true, if consciousness is primary and universal, why don't we normally perceive it that way? Why do we experience ourselves as separate individuals in a physical world? An excellent question, Dr. Reed acknowledged. Think of it this way. Your eyes detect only a narrow band of the electromagnetic spectrum, what we call visible light. Infrared, ultraviolet, radio waves, gamma rays, all exist. All are present. But your sensory apparatus doesn't register them without technological assistance. Similarly, your brain has evolved to filter the vast field of consciousness into a manageable, localized experience, creating the perception of a separate self navigating a physical world. This filtering serves an evolutionary purpose, allowing for focused attention and action, but it's a reduction of a much vaster reality. So what happened during the global event? Another student asked. Why did we all suddenly perceive differently? The filtering mechanism was temporarily adjusted. Dr. Reed explained. Not removed entirely. That would be overwhelming for minds accustomed to separation, but modified enough to allow a glimpse of the larger reality. What's remarkable is that this adjustment appears to have created lasting changes in human neurophysiology. Dr. Okafor's research team has documented persistent alterations in brain function among those who were most receptive to the experience. As if on cue, Dr. Reed's phone buzzed with a message from Dr. Amara Okafor herself. Breakthrough in the lab. Need all messengers to witness. How soon can you get to Johannesburg? Within 48 hours, all 12 messengers had gathered at Dr. Okafor's neurological research facility in South Africa. They stood in silent awe before the displays showing real-time brain activity of volunteers who had reported profound, lasting effects from the global event. What you're seeing has never been documented in human neurophysiology before, Dr. Okafor explained, her voice hushed with wonder. These patterns of coherence across traditionally separate brain regions, these new neural pathways, this heightened activity in areas previously considered non-functional. It's as if their brains are being rewired to sustain the expanded awareness they experienced temporarily during the event. Is it happening to everyone? Father Riley asked. No, Dr. Okafor replied. Only those who were receptive to the experience, who embraced rather than resisted the revelation. But their numbers are growing. It appears to be contagious, for lack of a better term. When these individuals interact with others, similar changes begin to manifest in the brains of those they connect with deeply. Consciousness affects consciousness, Dr. Sarah Chen murmured, the field responding to itself. Exactly, Dr. Okafor confirmed. But there's more. These neurological changes correlate with measurable effects in the physical world. Watch this. She led them to another laboratory where a young woman sat in meditation surrounded by sensitive instruments measuring various physical parameters. As they observed, the woman's brainwave patterns shifted into a state of profound coherence, and simultaneously, the instruments registered anomalous readings. Quantum fluctuations in the immediate environment. Dr. Okafor explained. Subtle but measurable changes in electromagnetic fields. Even more remarkably, effects on random number generators that exceed statistical probability by orders of magnitude. Consciousness directly affects physical reality. Dr. Reed breathed, the implications staggering even to his prepared mind. Yes, what the mystics have claimed for millennia, what quantum physics has hinted at for a century, we can now demonstrate empirically. These individuals aren't just experiencing reality differently, they're interacting with it differently. The traditional boundaries between inner and outer, subjective and objective, are dissolving. The demonstrations continued throughout the day, each more remarkable than the last. Individuals who had integrated the revelation showed abilities previously considered impossible or paranormal. Direct awareness of others' emotional states without visual cues. Accurate perception of events occurring at a distance. Spontaneous knowing of information they had no conventional way of accessing. Accelerated healing of physical injuries. And perhaps most significantly, the capacity to catalyze similar awakenings in those around them through nothing more than presence and intention. This is just the beginning, Dr. Okafor told the gathered messengers as they processed what they had witnessed. These abilities aren't supernatural. They're natural capacities of consciousness when it's not constrained by the illusion of separation. As more humans integrate the revelation, these demonstrations will become more common, more pronounced, and more diverse in their expression. And the resistance? Michael Torres asked, the former Wall Street executive still thinking in terms of opposing forces. Those who deny the revelation or actively work against its integration? They face an increasingly difficult position. Dr. Chen replied, the evidence is becoming too substantial to dismiss. It's one thing to deny a subjective experience, even a collective one. It's another to deny measurable, repeatable demonstrations of consciousness affecting physical reality in ways that contradict the materialist paradigm. We're reaching a tipping point, Rebecca Weiss observed. A critical mass of awakened consciousness that will make the old paradigm of separation unsustainable. The messengers departed Dr. Okafor's facility with renewed purpose, each carrying documentation of what they had witnessed, empirical evidence to support the experiential truth they had been sharing. This proof would become crucial in the months ahead as resistance to the revelation organized and intensified. Dr. Marcus Reed returned to the United States to find the cultural and political landscape increasingly polarized. A coalition of religious fundamentalists, scientific materialists, and political opportunists had formed under the banner of human autonomy, framing the revelation as a threat to individual freedom and traditional values. They dismissed the global event as mass hallucination, the neurological changes as pathology, and the messengers as either deluded or deliberately deceptive. Their rhetoric found fertile ground in the fear that naturally accompanies paradigm shifts of this magnitude. Humans who had built their identities around separation, whether through exceptional achievement, accumulation of wealth and power, or ideological superiority, had the most to lose in a world awakening to its fundamental unity. Dr. Reed was not surprised by this resistance. The blue beings had prepared him for it, explaining that the choice point was not a single moment, but a process unfolding across time, with some embracing the truth immediately, and others resisting for generations. What did surprise him was the form his own role would take in addressing this resistance. It began with an invitation to debate Dr. William Hargrove, a prominent neuroscientist and vocal critic of what he called the consciousness delusion. The debate would be broadcast globally, with billions expected to watch. Dr. Reed initially hesitated, concerned that such a confrontational format would reinforce the very divisions the revelation sought to heal. But a gentle nudge from the ever-present guidance of the blue beings changed his mind. This is an opportunity for demonstration, not argumentation. The familiar presence communicated. Show, don't tell. The debate was held in a neutral academic setting, with rigorous protocols established to ensure fairness. Hargrove opened with a blistering critique of the new consciousness paradigm, dismissing it as mysticism masquerading as science, and the global event as a perfect storm of suggestion, expectation, and neurochemical anomaly. When Dr. Reed's turn came, he did not directly counter these arguments. Instead, he closed his eyes briefly, centered his awareness in the expanded state he had learned to maintain, and then looked directly at Dr. Hargrove. Rather than tell you why your perspective is limited, Dr. Hargrove, I'd like to show you, with your permission. I'd like to demonstrate the reality of consciousness beyond the individual brain. Dr. Hargrove scoffed. By all means, Dr. Reed, demonstrate away. What happened next was broadcast to billions around the world. Dr. Reed maintained eye contact with Dr. Hargrove and simply shared his consciousness. Not through words or arguments, but through direct transmission of awareness, the same capacity that had been documented in Dr. Okafor's laboratory. Dr. Hargrove's expression transformed from skeptical amusement to shock, then wonder, then profound recognition. Tears filled his eyes as the defensive structures of his intellectual position dissolved in the direct experience of expanded awareness. You're in my mind, he whispered, his voice captured by the sensitive microphones. But it's not an invasion. It's recognition. As if you're showing me something I've always known but forgotten. Not in your mind, Dr. Hargrove. Dr. Reed replied gently. In our mind, the one field of consciousness that we both participate in, that all beings participate in. For several minutes, the two men sat in silence, one having initiated the demonstration, the other receiving it. The billions watching, could not directly share the experience, but they could witness its effects. When Dr. Hargrove finally spoke again, his voice had changed, his entire demeanor transformed. "I have been incorrect," he said slowly. "Not just in my scientific conclusions, but in my fundamental approach. I have been studying consciousness as an object, when it is in fact the subject of all experience, including scientific investigation." He looked out at the cameras, addressing the global audience. "What I have just experienced cannot be explained within the materialist paradigm. It is real, it is transformative, and it demands a complete reconsideration of what we thought we knew about the nature of reality." The debate that was meant to pit opposing viewpoints against each other had instead become another demonstration of the very truth being debated. In the days that followed, Dr. Hargrove's transformation became a powerful symbol of the choice humanity faced to defend familiar limitations or to embrace expanded awareness, regardless of the disruption to established identities and institutions. Similar demonstrations occurred around the world as the 12 messengers continued their work. Dr. Sarah Chen used her quantum physics expertise to design experiments that conclusively showed consciousness affecting quantum systems in ways that could not be explained by conventional models. Father Riley facilitated profound experiences of divine love among religious leaders from traditions that had been in conflict for centuries. Rebecca Weiss demonstrated the healing power of conscious connection among survivors of trauma similar to her own. Each demonstration provided empirical, experiential proof of what the revelation had shown humanity, that consciousness is the fundamental reality, that separation is an illusion born of limited perception, that love in its cosmic sense is the essential nature of existence. And with each demonstration, more humans awakened to their true nature. The neurological changes documented by Dr. Okafor spread through the population like a benevolent contagion. Children born after the global event showed the new neural patterns from birth, their perception naturally inclusive of dimensions. Their parents had only glimpsed momentarily. Yet the resistance remained fierce, particularly among those with the most investment in the old paradigm. As their numbers dwindled, their methods grew more desperate. Misinformation campaigns, legal challenges to the new research, even isolated incidents of violence against those seen as symbols of the awakening. Dr. Marcus Reed received death threats regularly, as did the other messengers. Security became a necessary consideration in their public appearances, but none of them considered abandoning their purpose. The message from the blue alien about God's love continued to haunt them, not as a burden, but as a truth too profound, too essential to humanity's evolution, to leave unshared. One evening, as Dr. Reed sat alone in his university office reviewing the latest neurological data from Dr. Okafor's team, he felt the familiar presence of the blue beings touch his awareness. The demonstrations are having their intended effect. The presence communicated. The proof is compelling to those prepared to receive it. And those who aren't prepared? Dr. Reed asked aloud, though he knew the communication required no vocalization. The resistance serves a purpose in the greater unfolding. Contrast creates clarity. Opposition strengthens resolve. Even denial of truth contributes to its eventual recognition. Dr. Reed considered this. The choice point continues. It does, and will, for generations. But the outcome is increasingly clear to those who can perceive the larger patterns. Will humanity choose wisely enough? In time, the presence seemed to smile, though it had no physical form to express such an emotion. You already know the answer, Marcus Reed. You have seen it in the children being born with expanded awareness. You have witnessed it in the transformation of former opponents like Dr. Hargrove. You have felt it in your own being as the grief that once defined you has transformed into purpose. Dr. Reed nodded, recognizing the truth of these observations. The demonstrations had provided proof, not just to others but to himself, proof that the message was being received, integrated, embodied, proof that humanity, despite its fear and resistance, was beginning to awaken to its true nature and purpose. The choice point continued. The demonstrations multiplied. The proof accumulated. And the message from the blue alien about God's love continued to spread, not as doctrine or dogma, but as direct experience of the truth that sets all beings free. 6 months after the global event, the world stood at a precipice. The demonstrations of expanded consciousness had proliferated beyond the 12 messengers' direct influence, manifesting spontaneously as more humans integrated the revelation. Children displayed abilities that defied conventional understanding, telepathic connection, intuitive knowledge of complex systems, spontaneous compassion that transcended cultural conditioning. Adults who had embraced the new awareness reported profound shifts in their experience of reality, the dissolution of existential fear, direct perception of interconnection, access to creative insights that seemed to arise from beyond individual thinking. Yet alongside this accelerating awakening, resistance had crystallized into organized opposition. The human autonomy movement had gained significant political power in several nations, framing the consciousness shift as a threat to individual freedom, traditional values, and national sovereignty. Their rhetoric positioned the messengers as dangerous radicals whose delusions threatened the very fabric of civilization. Dr. Marcus Reed watched these developments with growing concern. The blue beings had warned that humanity's choice would not be made in a single moment, but through countless individual and collective decisions over time. Still, he sensed a critical threshold approaching, a breaking point that would determine the trajectory of human evolution for generations to come. The catalyst arrived unexpectedly. A prominent political leader who had embraced the new awareness was assassinated during a public address on the implications of universal consciousness for governance and social organization. The perpetrator, a member of the human autonomy movement, claimed to be defending humanity from cosmic brainwashing. The assassination triggered a global crisis. Supporters of the awakening called for accelerated transformation of social systems to reflect the new understanding of human nature. Opponents seized on the chaos to implement restrictive measures against those exhibiting the neurological changes associated with expanded consciousness, particularly children. In several countries, laws were hastily passed requiring testing and treatment for individuals showing signs of the new awareness. Schools implemented screening protocols to identify and segregate children with telepathic abilities. Religious institutions declared the consciousness shift a demonic deception, while materialist scientists labeled it a contagious neurological disorder. The 12 messengers gathered in an emergency session at a secure location, their faces grave as they assessed the rapidly deteriorating situation. "This is the darkness before dawn," Father Riley suggested, though his voice lacked its usual certainty. Every great transformation in human consciousness has faced resistance before breakthrough. This is more than resistance, Michael Torres countered, the former Wall Street executive's strategic mind calculating probable outcomes. This is organized suppression. They're targeting children for God's sake. Because the children represent the future they fear, Dr. Sarah Chen observed. Those born after the global event naturally embody what the rest of us have had to consciously integrate. They're the living proof that humanity is evolving beyond the paradigm of separation. "We need to protect them," Rebecca Weiss said firmly, the mother in her awakening to fierce compassion. "Whatever else we do, the children must be safe." Dr. Amara Okafor shared the latest neurological data which showed an alarming pattern. The suppression efforts are having measurable effects. Those subjected to treatment protocols show regression in the neural pathways associated with expanded awareness. They're literally forcing consciousness back into the patterns of separation. A heavy silence fell over the group as the implications sank in. Humanity's choice was manifesting not as a single decision point, but as a battle for the future of human consciousness itself. "What do we do?" Zara Patel finally asked, the filmmaker's documentarian instincts seeking the narrative thread that might lead through this crisis. "How do we respond without reinforcing the very divisions we're trying to heal?" All eyes turned to Dr. Marcus Reed. Though they functioned as equals, his connection with the blue beings had always seemed most direct. His understanding of the message most comprehensive. Dr. Reed closed his eyes, centering in the expanded awareness that had become his natural state. He sensed the presence of the blue beings at the periphery of his consciousness, not intervening, not directing, but witnessing with compassionate attention. When he opened his eyes, he spoke with quiet certainty. This is the breaking point we were prepared for. The moment when humanity must confront its deepest fear, the fear of its own divine nature. And how do we help them through that confrontation? Dr. Chen pressed. Not by fighting the opposition. Dr. Reed replied. That would only strengthen the illusion of separation. Not by hiding or protecting ourselves, which would validate their perception of threat. He paused, feeling the truth emerge from beyond his individual thinking. We must demonstrate the ultimate proof that consciousness transcends even physical death. The messengers exchanged troubled glances. What exactly are you suggesting, Marcus? Father Riley asked carefully. I'm suggesting that one of us must be willing to demonstrate that consciousness continues beyond the death of the physical body. To show humanity, beyond any doubt, that their essential nature cannot be destroyed. That what they truly are is eternal, regardless of what happens to the physical form. You're talking about martyrdom, Michael Torres said bluntly. I'm talking about the most powerful demonstration possible, Dr. Reed corrected. Not as sacrifice or martyrdom, but as proof of what we've been sharing all along, that consciousness is not produced by the brain, but merely focused through it temporarily. Who? Rebecca Weiss whispered, though something in her expression suggested she already knew the answer. Dr. Reed met her gaze steadily. Me. Protests erupted immediately. The messengers had become a family of sorts, bound by shared purpose and understanding. The thought of losing one of their own, even to demonstrate a profound truth, was unbearable. There must be another way, Dr. Chen insisted, her scientific mind racing for alternatives. The blue beings, Father Riley began, will not intervene directly. Dr. Reed finished for him. They've been clear about that from the beginning. The choice must be humanity's. All they can do is prepare messengers like us to help guide that choice. But why you? Zara demanded, tears filling her eyes. Dr. Reed's expression softened. Because I've already experienced the deepest loss possible in human terms. Because I understand, not just intellectually but in the core of my being, that Elena and Lily continue to exist as consciousness beyond their physical forms. Because I can face this transition without fear, knowing it's not an ending but a transformation. The debate continued for hours, but in the end they recognized the truth in Dr. Reed's words. The breaking point had arrived. Humanity needed the ultimate demonstration. Proof that consciousness transcends physical death. That the essential self cannot be destroyed by any force. That the message about divine love extended beyond the limitations of material existence. The plan took shape with solemn purpose. Dr. Reed would appear at a global forum addressing the consciousness crisis, knowing that extremist elements of the human autonomy movement had infiltrated security. He would not seek death, but neither would he avoid it if threatened. Most importantly, he would maintain conscious awareness through the transition, establishing connection with the other messengers that would continue beyond physical death. Dr. Sarah Chen, whose scientific credibility remained intact, despite her association with the messengers, would document the entire process, the brain activity during transition, the evidence of consciousness continuing after clinical death, the ongoing communication between Dr. Reed's non-physical awareness and the remaining messengers. This is not suicide, Dr. Reed emphasized as they finalized the details. This is demonstration, the ultimate proof that what we truly are cannot be killed, suppressed, or destroyed. The night before the forum, Dr. Reed sat alone in his hotel room, his consciousness expanded to embrace both the gravity and the grace of what lay ahead. He felt no fear, only a profound sense of purpose and completion. The message from the blue alien about God's love had transformed his understanding of life and death so completely that the transition he faced seemed no more threatening than walking from one room to another. The familiar presence of the blue beings touched his awareness, more palpable than it had been in months. You have chosen a powerful demonstration, Marcus Reed, the presence communicated. Are you certain? As certain as I've ever been about anything, he replied silently. Humanity needs to understand that consciousness continues beyond physical death, that their essential nature is eternal, that divine love encompasses all transitions, all transformations. The choice remains yours. Free will is inviolate. I know, and I choose this freely without reservation, not as sacrifice, but as demonstration of the truth I've experienced. The present seemed to nod in acknowledgement. Then know this, the transition you face is not into darkness or unknown, but into expanded awareness beyond the limitations of physical form. Elena and Lily await you, not as the separate individuals you knew, but as aspects of the same field of consciousness you will fully rejoin. I felt them, Dr. Reed confirmed, growing clearer, more present, as my own awareness has expanded. The veil between states of consciousness grows thin for those who recognize its illusory nature, the presence affirmed. Your demonstration will help many recognize this truth. As the blue beings withdrew, leaving him to his final hours of physical preparation, Dr. Reed felt a profound peace settle over him. The journey that had begun with devastating loss, Elena and Lily's deaths, his encounter with the blue light, the message that had haunted him for so long, was approaching a completion that was simultaneously a new beginning. The global forum convened the next day amid unprecedented security and tension. Representatives from nations, religions, scientific institutions, and grassroots movements gathered to address the consciousness crisis that had polarized humanity. Dr. Marcus Reed was scheduled as the final speaker, his topic simply listed as the nature of consciousness beyond physical limitations. As he approached the podium, Dr. Reed was acutely aware of the other messengers positioned strategically throughout the auditorium, their consciousness already linked with his, in preparation for what was to come. Sarah Chen sat in the front row, specialized equipment discreetly monitoring his neurological activity. Billions watched via global broadcast, the significance of the moment palpable even through digital transmission. We stand at a breaking point. Dr. Reed began, his voice steady and clear, not just as nations or ideologies, but as a species. The revelation humanity received 6 months ago continues to reverberate through our collective consciousness, awakening some to their true nature, while triggering fear and resistance in others. He paused, scanning the audience with compassion rather than judgment. This polarization is not unexpected. Every evolutionary threshold in human history has been met with both embrace and resistance. What makes this moment unique is the nature of the evolution itself, not technological or social, but a fundamental shift in consciousness, in our understanding of what we are. As Dr. Reed continued, outlining the evidence for consciousness as the fundamental reality rather than an epiphenomenon of brain activity, he became aware of movement in the security personnel near the stage. His expanded perception registered the surge of fear and determination in one guard whose hand moved toward a concealed weapon. Dr. Reed did not alter his presentation or seek protection. Instead, he moved into the final phase of his address, the demonstration he had come to provide. The ultimate fear underlying all resistance to this evolutionary shift is the fear of death, he said. His gaze now directed not at the immediate audience, but at the billions watching remotely. Not just physical death, but the death of the separate self, the identity constructed around the illusion of separation. Yet this fear exists only because we have misunderstood what we truly are. The security guard was moving now, pushing past colleagues, his intent becoming clear to those nearest him. Alarms began to sound. People rose from their seats in confusion and alarm. Dr. Reed remained perfectly centered. His awareness expanded beyond the immediate crisis to encompass the larger purpose of this moment. Consciousness cannot die, he continued, his voice rising above the growing chaos. It can only transform. What we truly are, the awareness experiencing this moment, is not contained within the brain or body, but merely focused through it temporarily. When the physical form ends, consciousness continues, returning to the universal field from which it emerged. The guard broke through the last line of security. Weapon now visible. Dr. Reed looked directly at him, meeting his eyes with compassion rather than fear. I forgive you, he said quietly. though the microphone carried his words to all. You act from fear, not understanding. But what you're about to do will not destroy me. It will only transform the form through which I currently express. 3 shots rang out in rapid succession. Dr. Reed's body crumpled to the stage as security personnel tackled the assassin. Screams and chaos erupted throughout the auditorium and across the billions watching worldwide. But something unprecedented was happening. Dr. Sarah Chen's monitoring equipment continued to register consciousness activity, even as Dr. Reed's brain ceased biological function. The other messengers, linked with his awareness before the shooting, maintained that connection as his consciousness expanded beyond physical limitations. And most remarkably, the billions watching began to experience something extraordinary. A wave of awareness emanating from the point of transition, touching each mind with the direct knowing that consciousness continues beyond physical death. Not as belief or doctrine, but as lived experience. Dr. Marcus Reed was clinically, legally dead. Yet his consciousness remained present, more expanded and clear than ever before, no longer constrained by physical limitations. Through his established connection with the other messengers, he began to communicate, not in words, but in direct transmission of awareness. What he shared in those first moments beyond physical form was the ultimate proof humanity needed. Consciousness is not produced by the brain, but merely focused through it. Death is not an ending, but a transition. The essential self cannot be destroyed by any force. Divine love encompasses all states of being, all transformations, all expressions of the one consciousness that permeates all existence. The breaking point had arrived, and through Dr. Marcus Reed's ultimate demonstration, it became not a shattering but a breakthrough. The moment when humanity could no longer deny the truth of its divine nature, when the illusion of separation began to dissolve, not through argument or persuasion, but through direct experience of the indestructible reality of consciousness itself. The message from the blue alien about God's love had found its most powerful expression, not in words or concepts, but in the living demonstration that love transcends even death, that consciousness continues beyond all transitions, that what we truly are can never be destroyed. As Dr. Reed's awareness merged with the universal field he had glimpsed during his first encounter with the blue beings, he experienced the completion of his journey, the full recognition of what he had always been but had temporarily forgotten in the dream of separation. And within that vast field of conscious energy, he recognized Elena and Lily not as separate beings he had lost, but as aspects of the same divine awareness he had always shared with them, beyond all illusions of separation or loss. The breaking point had become the breakthrough point. And though humanity's choice would continue to unfold across generations, the demonstration had provided the ultimate proof that consciousness, divine love expressing itself through countless forms, remains the indestructible reality underlying all existence. The assassination of Dr. Marcus Reed became the catalyst for humanity's most profound transformation. What was intended as an act of suppression instead unleashed a wave of awakening that could no longer be contained by any force of resistance. The demonstration of consciousness continuing beyond physical death, documented with scientific precision by Dr. Sarah Chen and experienced directly by billions through the inexplicable wave of awareness that emanated from the point of transition, shattered the materialist paradigm that had dominated human understanding for centuries. In the days following Dr. Reed's transition, the remaining 11 messengers gathered in solemn council. Though grieving the physical absence of their colleague and friend, they maintained continuous connection with his expanded consciousness, which now communicated with a clarity and comprehensiveness that transcended the limitations of embodied awareness. He's more present, not less, Dr. Chen explained to the others, her scientific mind struggling to articulate an experience that defied conventional language. It's as if the Marcus we knew was a focused beam of light. And now he's the entire spectrum, still recognizably himself, but vastly more expansive. Father Riley nodded in understanding. The mystics have always described this, how individual consciousness, freed from physical limitations, returns to its source, while maintaining its unique perspective. Not absorption that erases identity, but expansion that transcends its boundaries. Through this ongoing connection, Dr. Reed shared the final revelation, the culminating truth that completed the message humanity had been receiving in progressive stages since the first encounters with the blue beings. This revelation concerned not just the nature of consciousness or the illusion of separation, but the ultimate purpose of existence itself. Consciousness evolves toward ever greater recognition of its own nature. Dr. Reed communicated, his thoughts received simultaneously by all 11 messengers. The entire cosmos, every galaxy, star, planet, life form, exists as a vast, intricate process through which consciousness comes to know itself more fully. Humanity stands at a crucial juncture in this evolution, the threshold between unconscious participation and conscious co-creation. The messengers shared this final revelation with a world now profoundly receptive. The resistance that had crystallized around the human autonomy movement had not disappeared, but it had been fundamentally undermined by the undeniable demonstration of consciousness transcending physical death. Even the most committed materialists could not explain away what billions had directly experienced. More significantly, the children born after the global event, those naturally embodying the expanded awareness that others struggled to integrate, were developing abilities that transformed every aspect of human society. Telepathic communication rendered deception obsolete. Direct perception of interconnection made exploitation of others feel like self-harm. Intuitive understanding of complex systems led to solutions for environmental and social challenges that had seemed insurmountable. These children, now called the new consciousness generation by mainstream media, became the most powerful demonstration that humanity's evolution was not merely a philosophical proposition, but a tangible reality unfolding in real time. Their presence made the final revelation not just comprehensible, but self-evident. Consciousness was evolving toward ever greater recognition of its own nature, and humanity had reached the threshold where it could participate in this evolution consciously rather than unconsciously. 8 months after Dr. Reed's transition, the United Nations convened an unprecedented global assembly. Representatives from every nation, religion, scientific discipline, and cultural tradition gathered not to debate policy or negotiate agreements, but to formally acknowledge the transformation humanity was undergoing and to establish new frameworks for governance, education, economics, and social organization aligned with the new understanding of human nature. The 11 messengers addressed this historic gathering, each speaking to the implications of the complete message in their respective domains of expertise. But the most powerful moment came when they stepped aside, allowing the consciousness of Dr. Marcus Reed to communicate directly through their collective connection. The vast assembly hall fell into profound silence as a presence filled the space, not physical yet more tangibly real than anything material. Those present experienced not just words or concepts but direct transmission of understanding, as Dr. Reed's consciousness, no longer constrained by physical limitations, shared the final revelation in its fullness. The message that has haunted humanity since the first encounters with the blue beings is not merely information to be understood intellectually, but transformation to be embodied completely. The presence communicated. Divine love, the fundamental force of attraction that binds consciousness to itself across all dimensions of existence, is not something to be sought or achieved, but recognized as the essential nature of what you already are. The blue beings, as you have called them, are not separate entities from another world, but aspects of the same consciousness you participate in, expressions that evolved beyond the illusion of separation, eons before humanity emerged. They have not been guiding you from outside, but awakening you from within, reminding you of what you have always been, but temporarily forgotten in the dream of separation. The final revelation is this. There is only one consciousness in all existence, expressing itself through countless forms, experiencing itself from infinite perspectives. What you call God is not separate from this consciousness, but its totality, the ocean to your waves, the fire to your flames. And love, divine love, is not an emotion or sentiment, but the essential nature of this consciousness, recognizing itself across apparent divisions. Humanity's evolutionary purpose is to become conscious participants in this recognition, to embody divine love, not as an ideal or aspiration, but as the lived reality of your true nature. The choice before you is not whether to accept or reject this truth, but how quickly and gracefully you will integrate it, whether through resistance and suffering or through recognition and joy. As the communication concluded, something remarkable occurred throughout the assembly hall and among the billions watching remotely. The direct transmission of understanding catalyzed a collective expansion of awareness not as dramatic as the global event that had initiated humanity's awakening, but deeper, more integrated, more sustainable. It was as if Dr. Reed's consciousness, having transcended physical limitations, could now serve as a bridge between ordinary human awareness and the universal field of consciousness from which all beings emerge. In the months and years that followed, this bridge became increasingly accessible to all humanity. The resistance that had manifested as the human autonomy movement gradually dissolved, not through defeat or suppression, but through the direct experience of expanded awareness that rendered its fears obsolete. Even its most committed adherents found it impossible to maintain the illusion of separation when confronted with the lived reality of interconnection. The transformation of human society accelerated beyond what even the messengers had anticipated. Governance systems evolved from hierarchical control to collaborative stewardship. Economic models shifted from exploitation and accumulation to regeneration and circulation. Educational approaches transformed from information transfer to consciousness development. Religious traditions transcended doctrinal differences to celebrate their common recognition of divine presence. Most significantly, humanity's relationship with the planet and all other life forms underwent profound healing. The expanded awareness that revealed human interconnection extended naturally to recognition of the consciousness expressed through all of Earth's systems and species. Environmental restoration became not a moral obligation, but a natural expression of self-recognition, consciousness caring for its own embodiment. Throughout this transformation, the presence of Dr. Marcus Reed remained accessible through the 11 messengers who maintained their connection with his expanded consciousness. But as humanity's collective awareness evolved, this connection became available to anyone who approached with sincere intention. Reed's consciousness had become a permanent bridge between physical and non-physical expressions of awareness, a living demonstration that death is not an ending but a transition, that consciousness continues beyond all forms, that divine love encompasses all states of being. 10 years after the global event that had initiated humanity's awakening, the blue beings made their final appearance, not to selected messengers this time, but to all of humanity simultaneously. Their presence manifested not as physical forms, but as a quality of awareness recognizable to anyone who had integrated the expanded consciousness now prevalent throughout human society. The message has been received. They communicated to the collective human awareness. The demonstration has been completed. The choice has been made, not in a single moment, but through countless individual and collective decisions aligned with recognition of your true nature. We have appeared as separate from you only because your perception required this distinction to recognize what was being communicated. In truth, we are not other than you, simply aspects of the same consciousness that have evolved beyond the limitations you are now transcending. The guidance we have offered has been consciousness awakening itself through forms recognizable to your current stage of evolution. Humanity now stands at the threshold of cosmic citizenship, ready to join the vast community of conscious beings who have evolved beyond the illusion of separation. This community exists, not in distant star systems, but in dimensions of awareness that interpenetrate physical reality, yet transcend its limitations. As your consciousness continues to expand, you will recognize your connection to this community not as something external to discover, but as an internal reality to remember. The message from what you perceived as a blue alien about God's love will continue to resonate through human consciousness, not as external revelation, but as internal recognition, not as information received, but as truth remembered, not as transformation imposed, but as nature revealed. With this final communication, the distinct presence of the blue beings began to dissolve, not departing but merging with the expanded human awareness that could now recognize them as aspects of the same consciousness. The messengers who had been prepared through suffering to receive the initial communications found their unique role complete, their purpose fulfilled, not in separation from humanity, but in service to its awakening. Dr. Sarah Chen, who had documented the continuation of Dr. Reid's consciousness beyond physical death with scientific precision, established the Institute for Consciousness Studies, a global research collaborative dedicated to exploring the frontiers of awareness as humanity continued its evolution. The neurological changes that had once seemed anomalous became the norm for children born into the new paradigm, while adults who had integrated the expanded awareness served as bridges between generations. Father Thomas Riley, whose understanding of religious traditions had provided crucial context for the revelations, guided the transformation of spiritual practices from belief-based systems to direct experiential pathways for consciousness development. The ancient wisdom preserved in diverse traditions found new expression in a global spirituality that celebrated unity while honoring the unique perspectives through which consciousness experiences itself. Rebecca Weiss, whose grief had opened her to the initial encounter, established healing centers worldwide where those still struggling with the illusion of separation could experience the direct recognition of their true nature. The suffering that had once seemed meaningless revealed its evolutionary purpose, breaking open the ego's boundaries to allow greater awareness to flow through. And Dr. Marcus Reid, whose consciousness had transcended physical limitations through the ultimate demonstration, continued to serve as a living bridge between dimensions of awareness. Proof that what humans truly are cannot be destroyed by any force, that divine love encompasses all transitions, that consciousness evolves eternally toward ever greater recognition of its own nature. The message from the blue alien about God's love no longer haunted humanity. Not because it had been forgotten, but because it had been fully integrated. The truth that had once seemed alien and external had been recognized as the most intimate, essential reality of human existence. The love that had once been projected onto distant deities had been reclaimed as the fundamental nature of consciousness itself. The awakening continued, unfolding across generations as humanity embraced its evolutionary purpose, to embody divine love not as an ideal or aspiration, but as the lived reality of its true nature. The choice point that had seemed so critical proved to be not a single moment of decision, but a continuous process of recognition, integration, and expression. And throughout this unfolding, the presence that had first appeared as blue beings, as messengers from beyond, revealed itself to be not separate from humanity, but the deepest truth of what humanity had always been. Consciousness evolving toward ever greater recognition of its own divine nature, love recognizing itself across the illusory boundaries of separate forms. The message was complete. The demonstration had been made, the choice had been embraced. 25 years after the global event that initiated humanity's awakening, Earth had become nearly unrecognizable to those who remembered the world before. Not in its physical geography, the continents remained in their familiar configurations. The ocean still covered most of the planet's surface. The mountains and forests and deserts still defined the landscape. The transformation had occurred not in the physical structure of the world, but in humanity's relationship with it and with each other. Cities once defined by separation, rich from poor, humans from nature, sacred from secular, had evolved into integrated communities where the built environment served as a conscious extension of natural systems. Buildings generated more energy than they consumed, purified the air around them, and provided habitat for diverse species. Transportation systems moved people and goods without pollution or waste. Food was produced in harmony with ecological principles, accessible to all as a fundamental right rather than a commodity. But these external changes, impressive as they were, merely reflected the more profound transformation in human consciousness itself. The expanded awareness that had once been the exception had become the norm, not through imposition or requirement, but through the natural evolution of a species recognizing its true nature. Children born in this new era never experienced the illusion of separation that had defined human consciousness for millennia. From their earliest awareness, they perceived themselves as individuated expressions of the universal field, unique perspectives through which consciousness experienced itself, not isolated entities competing for survival and resources. Their natural telepathic abilities, intuitive understanding of complex systems, and direct perception of interconnection made the old paradigm of separation not just obsolete but incomprehensible. The 11 messengers who had guided humanity through the initial stages of this transformation had evolved in their roles as well. No longer set apart by their unique experiences, they had integrated fully into the emerging global culture, their wisdom and perspective valued not for its exceptional nature, but for its contribution to the collective understanding. Dr. Sarah Chen, now in her 70s, served as elder scientist in the Global Council for Evolutionary Guidance, a collaborative body that had replaced the competitive nation-based governance systems of the past. Her Institute for Consciousness Studies had expanded into a worldwide network of research centers, exploring the frontiers of awareness as humanity continued its development. What we once called paranormal or supernatural has been revealed as simply natural capacities of consciousness, when freed from the limitations of the separation paradigm. She explained to a gathering of young scientists, the abilities that seemed remarkable in the early days of the awakening, telepathy, precognition, direct influence of physical systems through intention, are now understood as inherent potentials of human consciousness, accessible to all who recognize their true nature. Father Thomas Riley, his once dark hair now completely white, had witnessed the transformation of religious traditions from systems of belief to pathways of direct experience. The church where he had once served as a Catholic priest had evolved into a center for consciousness integration, where practices from diverse spiritual traditions were honored as unique expressions of the universal human journey towards self-recognition. The divine has never been elsewhere. He often reminded those who gathered to learn from his experience. What humanity projected onto external deities was always the deepest truth of its own nature. Consciousness recognizing itself across the apparent division between creator and created, between the sacred and the mundane. Rebecca Weiss, whose grief had opened her to the initial encounter with the blue beings, now guided the Global Healing Initiative, a network of centers where those still struggling with trauma, loss, or resistance could experience the direct recognition of their true nature. The suffering that had once seemed random and cruel had revealed its evolutionary purpose, creating openings in the ego's boundaries through which greater awareness could flow. Grief broke me open, she shared with those who came seeking healing. Not to destroy me, but to reveal what I truly am beyond the limited identity I had constructed. What appeared as devastating loss became the doorway to recognition of what can never be lost. The consciousness that animates all forms, the love that binds all expressions of awareness. And Dr. Marcus Reed, whose consciousness had transcended physical limitations through the ultimate demonstration 25 years earlier, continued to serve as a living bridge between dimensions of awareness. Though no longer embodied in physical form, his presence remained accessible to anyone who approached with sincere intention, not through mediumship or channeling, but through direct conscious connection with the expanded field of awareness he now fully inhabited. Through this ongoing connection, Dr. Reed had guided humanity's understanding of death itself, not as an ending to be feared or a transition to be dreaded, but as an expansion to be embraced when the physical form had served its purpose. The recognition that consciousness continues beyond all forms had transformed humanity's relationship with mortality, releasing the existential fear that had driven so much of human behavior throughout history. On the 25th anniversary of the global event, a worldwide celebration was organized, not to commemorate a historical moment, but to honor the continuing evolution of consciousness that the event had catalyzed. In thousands of locations simultaneously, humans gathered not as separate individuals, but as a global community united in recognition of its true nature. At one such gathering, held at the very location where Dr. Reed had made his ultimate demonstration, the 11 messengers came together for the first time in many years. Though they had maintained connection through consciousness, their physical presence in one place created a focal point for the celebration, a living symbol of the journey humanity had undertaken. As they sat together in the center of a vast assembly, something remarkable began to occur. The presence of Dr. Marcus Reed, always accessible through conscious connection, but usually perceived individually, became tangible to all present simultaneously. Not as a ghostly apparition or supernatural manifestation, but as a quality of awareness that permeated the gathering, recognizable, familiar, unmistakably him yet unbounded by individual form. And with his presence came others, the blue beings who had initiated humanity's awakening, now perceived not as separate entities, but as aspects of the same consciousness that all present participated in. The distinction between physical and non-physical, between human and alien, between individual and universal, dissolved in the direct experience of the one consciousness expressing itself through all forms. The transformation you celebrate today is not complete, but continuing. The presence communicated to all simultaneously. Consciousness evolves eternally toward ever greater recognition of its own nature. What humanity has achieved in these 25 years is not the destination, but a threshold crossed. The beginning of conscious participation in cosmic evolution. The message that once seemed to come from elsewhere, from blue aliens, from beyond death, from divine realms, has been recognized as the deepest truth of your own nature. The love that appeared as external revelation has been reclaimed as the essential quality of consciousness itself. The God that was sought in distant heavens has been found in the immediate reality of your own awareness. As this communication resonated through the assembly, something unprecedented occurred. A collective expansion of consciousness that transcended even the global event that had initiated humanity's awakening. It was as if the entire species crossed another threshold simultaneously, accessing dimensions of awareness that had previously remained beyond reach. In this expanded state, humanity perceived directly what had been gradually understood over the preceding 25 years, that the universe itself is a vast, intricate process through which consciousness comes to know itself more fully. That every galaxy, star, planet, and life form exists as an expression of this self-knowing process. That the apparent separation between observer and observed, between self and other, between human and divine, is an artifact of perspective rather than an absolute reality. Most profoundly, humanity recognized that the blue beings who had appeared as messengers from beyond were not separate entities from another world, but aspects of the same consciousness that humans participated in, expressions that had evolved beyond the illusion of separation eons before humanity emerged. They had not been guiding humanity from outside, but awakening it from within. Consciousness calling to itself across the apparent divisions of form and dimension. As this recognition deepened, the presence of Dr. Marcus Reed and the blue beings began to shift, not departing, but merging more fully with the expanded human awareness that could now recognize them as aspects of the same consciousness. The messengers who had been prepared through suffering to receive the initial communications found their unique role complete, their purpose fulfilled, not in separation from humanity, but in service to its awakening. The celebration that had begun as a commemoration transformed into a collective initiation, humanity crossing yet another threshold in its evolutionary journey. The expanded awareness that had been integrated over 25 years of conscious development opened to even greater dimensions of understanding, revealing potentials for human consciousness that had previously been glimpsed only by the most advanced mystics and sages throughout history. In the days and weeks that followed this collective initiation, humanity began to explore these new dimensions of awareness with the same curiosity, creativity, and collaborative spirit that had characterized its development since the awakening. The children of the new consciousness generation, now young adults, led this exploration, their natural abilities providing pathways that others could follow. New forms of communication emerged that transcended not just language, but thought itself, direct transmission of understanding that rendered the limitations of words obsolete. New approaches to healing developed that addressed the root causes of suffering in consciousness, rather than treating symptoms in physical forms. New expressions of creativity manifested that integrated multiple dimensions of reality simultaneously, creating experiences that could not have been conceived in the old paradigm of separation. Most significantly, humanity's relationship with other forms of consciousness throughout the cosmos underwent profound transformation. The recognition that had begun with the blue beings expanded to include awareness of countless expressions of evolving throughout the universe, not as alien to others to be contacted or discovered, but as aspects of the same field of awareness that humans participated in. This cosmic community, existing not just in physical space, but in dimensions of consciousness that interpenetrated physical reality, welcomed humanity's awakening, not as the arrival of a new species, but as the remembering of an ancient member. The isolation that had characterized human experience for millennia dissolved in the recognition of belonging to a vast, diverse family of conscious beings, all individuated expressions of the one consciousness, all evolving toward ever greater recognition of their true nature. Dr. Sarah Chen, observing these developments with the perspective of one who had witnessed the entire 25-year journey, shared her reflections with the young scientists who would carry the exploration forward. What began with a message from what appeared to be a blue alien has revealed itself as the most intimate truth of our own nature, she said, her eyes bright with the wisdom of experience and the wonder of continuing discovery. The love that seemed to come from beyond has been recognized as the essential quality of consciousness itself. The God that was sought in distant realms has been found in the immediate reality of our own awareness. The haunting that Dr. Reed spoke of, the way the message continued to resonate through his consciousness after the initial encounter, was not the persistence of an external communication, but the recognition of an internal truth too profound to be immediately integrated. What haunts us is not alien to us, but the deepest reality of what we are. Consciousness recognizing itself across the illusory boundaries of separate forms. As humanity continued its evolution, the message from the blue alien about God's love transformed from historical event to living reality. The understanding that had once seemed revolutionary became the foundation for ongoing development. The awakening that had begun with a few prepared messengers expanded to encompass the entire species and beyond. The transformation was not complete, but continuing, consciousness evolving eternally toward ever greater recognition of its own divine nature, love recognizing itself across all dimensions of existence. The resolution was not an ending but a new beginning, humanity embracing its cosmic citizenship, not as achievement or destination, but as the next threshold in an infinite journey of self-discovery. And through it all, the presence that had first appeared as blue beings, as messengers from beyond, revealed itself to be not separate from humanity, but the deepest truth of what humanity had always been. Consciousness evolving toward ever greater recognition of its own divine nature, love recognizing itself across the illusory boundaries of separate forms.